Welcome to the Renault Zoe, or in certain parts of France, do you call it Zoe? Is in the girl's name, or is it just Renault Zoe? People get very caught up in model pronunciations on this channel, so I need to get it right. Anyway, welcome along to a look around at the new Renault EV. It's the newest EV in their range. In fact, it's the only EV in their range. It is €27,000 before metallic paint and before delivery related charges. And then if you go to this one, which is the GT line, this is the daddy, you're talking nearly €32,000, and that's after all the grants and the SEAI and how you doing. So it's a little city car, it's got a good range, but as you've just noticed, it's kind of expensive. On the back of this model, you'll get a ZE50 electric, which is a 50 kilowatt hour battery reference. And like all electric vehicles, nobody knows what to do with the cables, so there's just nowhere to put them inside the boot of this car, which actually is not a bad size boot for the size. You might think this is going to be tiny, but it's not bad. If you get the Bose sound system, the GT line, that also takes up a bit of space for the sub in it, which, you know, every inch counts when it comes to a boot this size. But you can also fold in the seats, and there's good space when you do that, and there's lights, and there's shopping bag holders. Yay. But you know what, it's not a bad little boot for a car of its size. Another positive that the Zoe has going for it, especially when you consider the size of the car, what it can do on the inside is what matters. This car has a front passenger seat set of ISOFIX points, so you can get 3 children's ISOFIX seats into this small car. There's cars twice the size, 3 times the price, that can't do that. The Zoe is not capable of 100 kilowatt charging, unlike the Peugeot E208, the Opel Corsa, but in Ireland we've 3 of those chargers, and they're nowhere near Dublin. And if you're buying this car for city purposes, just forget I said anything. It'll still do on a wall box at home a full charge in about 9 hours. And if you think about it, when you sleep or you're home, you should be home for 9 hours and you wake up with a full range again in the morning. What is that range actually? I'll tell you in a second, but we must have a look at the back. The Zoe gets a bit of criticism online for how much space and legroom particularly is in the back. Now, I think it's okay. It obviously depends who is in the back and who's driving the car in terms of how much rear space there's going to be. But if there's an average person and an average person, you'll definitely fit 4. I mean, the lack of armrests in the back and just the overall seating position, these are quite low, so that's a bit better. But to actually, so like the front, there's a problem with the front seats as well, but everything is elevated. Now, it's okay. Height, not massive head height, which again is something that maybe could have benefited if everything was a bit lower in the car, but then you've got batteries, haven't you? So there's 2 USB charging points in the back, which is pretty good. The passenger seat has a little kind of pocket for keeping things in. There's nothing extra too fancy. I mean, you get a grab handle. Thanks very much for asking. And that is about it. These rear windows are actually tinted, by the way, if you go for the GT line. So it's actually, those door handles, you love them or hate them. It can be hard to close first time, every time. It's actually 52 kilowatt hour battery, not 50, even though the badge and all that, don't know what that's about. The maximum range, according to WLTP, is 398 kilometers. Now, if you were going down a very big hill with your climate off, your eco mode on, it was sunny, it was summertime, and there was a fairly decent tailwind, you'll probably, maybe, I don't know, get that. In winter time, it'll do high 200 kilometers. Renault are very upfront about this on their website. And in summertime, an average is 375. But that really is depending on how you charge it, and you're totally reliant on your driving conditions and whether you've got to encounter hills and flat roads and all that stuff. It's actually really, really upfront and transparent how they explain on their website. When I charge it at home using a 7.2 kilowatt charging option, it'll take about 9 hours, which overnight is fine. You know, you wake up and you've got all that range. This car, by the way, has the Renault LED Pure Vision lights. They're pretty sexy looking and really, really bright, which is, you know, more important than when they're sexy looking. This little black nib here would suggest keyless, but I don't know if it's the key card I'm using. I just can't get it to work. Anyway, let's check out the front together and see what it's like up front. It's actually quite impressive what they've managed to achieve with the Zoe, because underneath it's pretty much the same car as the 2020 model, but then in here it's a vast improvement. A lot of the interior is now from the new Clio, which is very, very acceptable. On the full spec models, you get this quite large tablet display that sits there. There's a lot of buttons here that are blank. So you got your eco mode and your heated seats, and then there's there's 3 buttons here that do nothing, but this is the top of the range. So what are they for? There's another 2 USBs in here, an auxiliary and a 12-volt charger. There's wireless charging on the GT line, which you can just place your phone that charges. Yeah, I'm sure everyone gets that by now. There's a little shelf area here for storing things, because the glove box is pretty useless, but they've given you that option anyway. And your vitals are here in colour. If you go over the speed limit, it'll flash at you. Again, depending on spec, they don't all have that. And you'll just get a very obvious warning that you're breaking the speed limit, and sorry guard, I didn't know, won't be accepted anymore. And yeah, the headlining is a bit soft and doesn't feel particularly like you can push that in, but like, come on, you've got your cruise control, you've got it's easy to use. They've moved it from down there to up here. They did that in the Clio as well, so thankfully that's a sign of probably things to come. And then your very small, very cool little gear shifter. In fact, it kind of reminds me of the thing they used to make the Lewis go back and forwards. So, one of the problems, these driver seats, they go back and forward, they don't go up and down. Neither does the passenger one. So, if you're particularly tall, you're going to be driving the car like this. And even me, who's not that tall, I do feel a little bit high up to my normal driving position. Now, they've sorted out steering wheel, but if you have it down there and you're sitting up here, it's like, oh, hello steering wheel, hi. So yeah, it would be better if that worked. And the other thing that bugs me is there's no armrest, and I really like an armrest, like really. Oh, Renault jingle, which comes on every time you start the car, even in the morning when everyone's asleep. If you don't have that door closed quickly, you'll play that tune to your entire road. So Bluetooth, CarPlay, Android, all as standard, different sources, easy to use. You do get nav on the car, and it looks pretty good actually. I like their nav map display, very futuristic and modern looking. Well done there, Renault. And yes, you can use the timer to charge the car, so that that's all sorted for you. You don't need to worry about it, and it'll give you alerts to say there's a toll road ahead, or there's roadworks ahead, or restricted access. So quite intuitive live traffic options on the car, which is very good for the car of this price. That is impressive. It's a great city car, the Zoe, and like in that sense I don't mean it's not for motorways either, but it's 4 meters long. It's really kind of zippy around town. It's easy for darting through smaller, tighter roads. It's going to be easier to park. So it does that job brilliantly. And now with the better range in the car and some nice optional extras in a lot of the trim, but in this GT version of it, I'm getting blind spot and lane departure. You've got your cruise control. It's not radar guided, in that it'll keep up with the car in front or brake or slow down for you, but with all those things covered, it's a bit of a long distance cruiser also. And the fact that it'll now do faster charging with a 50 kilowatt charger, it's a good little all-rounder. It's just not the biggest car physically in the world, so if you're going to use it to transport tons of people, then probably not going to be the option for you. It's got a 135 brake horsepower engine, which means you're never really left wanting for power. There's a bit of a blind spot from the A-pillar, and particularly on the driver's side. It's just the design of the car, the design of the glass around the wing mirror don't think it's as bad as the Nissan Leaf for blind spot, but it's not far off it. So I have the car in B mode now. That is the maximum level of regenerative braking, and it puts some energy back into the car's battery as you brake. And if I'm explaining that to you like you're a 2-year-old, apologies, but for people that are still trying to get their heads around what's a hybrid, what's a plug-in hybrid, and then does an electric car have any petrol at all? You know, they are normal questions from normal people who are somewhere down the line going to find themselves in an electric car, and I suppose it's an education process at the moment for them where they're just asking questions, which are good. If you have a question, do please leave one in the comments below. As soon as you lift your foot off the accelerator, you'll feel the car start to have braking force applied. And a lot of electric cars have this feature. It's not that unique. I suppose the Leaf is quite famous for it with its e-pedal. But it means when you take your foot off, you're not using the brake pedal as much. Now in the Zoe, you do as you come to the last couple of seconds where you really need to stop, you'll probably need to press the brake. But coming up to a junction with good visibility where you may not have to fully stop, for example, you're just lifting off the accelerator. As soon as you see your race clear, you're going again. And it's just a handy way to drive. You know, it's something different. It's something that other cars can't do. So it's a benefit of driving electric, but it's a good little feature. One of the most fun things about electric car driving is I'm sitting beside a Mercedes coupe here, which, you know, should be well able to take on this car. But actually, when you floor an electric car, you leave other cars for dust. And I could hear him revving the nuts off that thing, and he wasn't going anywhere. It's, you know, it's not a very economical way of driving an electric car, but it's fun. The range in the car is affected by motorway driving, like any electric vehicle, that's normal. But dare I say it, the Zoe doesn't seem to be as affected on motorways, with the range reducing quickly compared to some other electric vehicles. And I don't know if these wind deflectors on the side or what it is, but there is a significant level of wind noise across the windows in the car when you're on a motorway. If I was to dock a point, there's not too many points to be docked in the Zoe, to be fair, but if I was going to knock one, that would have to be at the height adjustable, another issue. But apart from that, it handles quite well too. So now coming up to green lights, cars in front of me, I haven't touched the brake, car slows down enough, I've come to the junction, no braking required. So regen works well. I'm just going to call it a regen, it's a lot easier to say early on a Sunday morning. To sum up, it is a fun little car to drive, it's nippy, it looks kind of cool. The interior is a serious upgrade on the last model or pre-facelift Zoe, whatever way you kind of want to look at the car. It is a little bit expensive in this kind of trim for the size of the car. You're not far off 32 grand, and for some that is just going to be too much for the size of the car, but it does squeeze a lot into its smaller frame. And looking at the similar size city and B segment cars that are popping up all the time now, the Zoe has been Europe's best selling EV, and I don't know if it needs to be that worried about the competition. Thank you very much for watching. If you have a question, as always, that's what the comments are for, and I'll talk to you soon.